Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 16 of my Joseph Losey season. Today we're going to 1966 and Modesty, Blaise. Now this is a Kino Lorber Region A Blu-ray. This has an interview with first assistant Garrick Losey and the son of Joseph Losey. Interviews with screenwriter Evan Jones, who worked with Losey in King and Country in the last episode of my series, and assistant art director Norman Dormey. There's a commentary by film historian David Duval and filmmaker Amon Damastriani. There's an animated image gallery and a trailer gallery, so there's some really good extras. The commentary is especially worthwhile listening to. Unfortunately, when you get the commentary on, there's no subtitle option, which is a bit of a shame. I'm not sure why, because most films and most Kino Lorbers that have commentaries do have a subtitle option while you're listening to the commentary. This is another one of those Losey films where he wasn't the original director, and he came on board as a replacement. Now, Modesty, Blaise is a fairly famous comic strip in the 60s up until I think the 80s. It was still being written by Peter O'Donnell, a British writer, and Modesty, Blaise had a certain look. She had black hair, which in Losey's version she has all manner of hair in different colours. She does appear as kind of the Modesty Blaise from the comic strips in pretty much one scene out of the film. But there's a lot of changes from the comic strip in the books. Originally, Julie Christie was going to play Modesty Blaise. Michael Caine was going to play her sidekick, but who we get is Monica Vitti, fresh off working with Antonioni. This was her first English language film, and Terence Stamp, who Losey wanted just to look good. This is another collaboration with Dirk Bogarde, it's a bit of a departure from The Servant and King and Country to a comic strip film. It's, I guess, on the same kind of par as Bava's Danger Diabolique, and interestingly Chabrol's Blue Panther, which was made in or released in 1965. This is 1966. Blue Panther and Modesty Blaise actually make a very good double bill as examples of filmmakers that perhaps aren't as engaged with the subject as other filmmakers. Duval in his commentary does make the point, if it was Michael Caine and Julie Christie and it had been directed by Richard Lester, it may have been a different kind of film, but because Losey wasn't that engaged with the subject, he wanted to do a kind of homage to Antonioni, a satire. So there was script rewrites as it was going on. There was suggestions by Bogarde, who apparently wrote quite a lot of his own dialogue. Clive Revell had ideas, everybody had ideas. It was everybody was excited at the start with the project, but it quickly unravelled and everybody pretty much didn't get on with everybody else. Bogarde and Vitti fell out. Vitti and Losey would continually get into arguments. Vitti, because she was very insecure about her nose, never wanted to be shot in profile. Antonioni never shot her in profile, but Losey wanted to shoot her in profile, and she did everything she could to hide her Roman nose and not be shot in profile. Stamp has talked about how he was pretty much there for his looks. He didn't really know what he was supposed to be doing. Lots of people didn't really know what they were supposed to be doing or what their characters were supposed to be doing. The plot doesn't really matter. Obviously this is post-Bond, post-Harry Palmer, and this is a film where the look of the film, the production design, again by Richard MacDonald, is just amazing, but it's so amazing that it's probably distracting from the actual plot, which is about the British government using Modesty Blaise to get jewellery back from an Arab played by Clive Revell, who also plays a Scottish accountant of Dirk Bogarde. But in actual fact, the British government just want to kill the Sheik. But the plot really doesn't matter. There's an early, or not an early performance, but Robert Fox, the father of Edward Fox and James Fox, turns up in a bowler hat at the start of the film and gets blown up. The plot really doesn't matter. This is a film about style, pretty much over substance. Losey tries to inject some of his satire, but as he says, or as he said in the past, there's problems with censors, there was scenes that was cut. So again, it's another film. There's not that many films in Losey's kind of filmography that he was completely happy with, and Modesty Blaise, despite him saying it was ahead of its time, is another film that unfortunately he wasn't very happy with, and people weren't very happy with it when it came out. Certainly not fans of the comic strip who were expecting a kind of as accurate as you can with a film based on a comic strip can be. But because Vitti didn't like the costumes she had to wear, she was very nervous about her first English film, very insecure, and again she didn't want to be photographed in a certain way. She was used to Antonioni's way of working, and that wasn't the way Losey worked. And several people several actors on the set were a little bit jealous of the relationship that Losey had with Bogarde, because they kind of had a shorthand, that they kind of understood what each other was doing. But as I say, Bogarde was the idea of his white wig was his. He, as I said, he rewrote lots of his dialogue. The script was getting written as they were shooting almost, because people would just come up with ideas and Losey would just go with it. It certainly doesn't sound like a set where everything's under control and everybody knows what they're doing, because it just wasn't the case. But despite that, very much like Chabrol's Blue Panther, which has some of the same kind of issues, it is a tremendously fun film. There's some wonderful performances, and again the production design and the look of the film is absolutely stunning, but as I say, it can be somewhat distracting from actually trying to pay attention to what's supposed to be going on. So if you're kind of looking for a coherent, gritty spy spoof, then that's not what you're going to get. But very much like Chabrol's Blue Panther, if you go in with a kind of open mind and go in with, this is going to be different and a bit of fun, then you can certainly have a lot of fun with Modesty Blaise. Again, 119 minutes, it's way too long, but there's some interesting placement of the camera by Losey. There's some wonderful touches, and again, just fantastic performances. Bogarde at his most kind of effeminate, as a classic Bond villain. He could have fit right into Bond villains. I don't know whether Javier Bardem saw this for his performance in, I can't actually remember which Daniel Craig film that is. Skyfall, is it? Javier Bardem's in. But there's a lot of similarities between Bardem's performance and Dirk Bogarde's performance in this. So I guess maybe in some way it was ahead of its time, but it's one of those films where you just kind of feel, Vitti was a bit lost. Quite a few people of the cast were lost, and it maybe wasn't the right director to have done it. So again, it continues this Losey journey of doing lots of different projects, and maybe that's why he hasn't kind of got the credit that perhaps he deserves, as far as, yes, there's some obsessions and through lines that go through all of his work, but because it bounces around from genre to different projects. Obviously in the next episode of this series we're back with Harold Pinter and Dirk Bogarde and more of a chamber piece, but this was an experiment that Losey wanted to do, but he perhaps wasn't as interested in the subject matter, but he did view it as a chance to do comedy. The problem is some of it falls flat, but there's enough in it, I think, to make it an enjoyable watch. But expect flaws, and if you go in with certain expectations, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you certainly go in with a bit of an open mind, you can have some fun with it. There is a terrible singing sequence with Vitti and Stamp, which Stamp in the past has said, he did say to Losey, you need to get rid of this because it just doesn't work. But Losey, being the stubborn guy that he was at times, kept it in. And you can judge for yourself how well it succeeds. So again, another flawed Losey film after a few films in a row that are really good and really excellent. But again, if you're in the right mood for it, Modesty, Blaise will give you lots to keep you interested visually, even if not necessarily thematically or plot wise. So please let me know what you think about Modesty, Blaise if you've seen it, and hopefully you'll join me for part 17, which, as I say, is a return to a collaboration with Harold Pinter and another Dirk Bogarde. I did do a random review of Modesty, Blaise on the channel, which maybe goes into a little bit more detail of the plot and the kind of shots and camera work that Losey uses. This video is more of an overview of kind of what went on, why the film is the way it is, and why some of the performances, especially Vitti, perhaps is a little out of place, because she actually felt herself a little bit out of place. I think after this she went straight back to Antonioni to make another film with him. So thanks very much for watching, and hopefully you'll join me again for more Joseph Losey as we continue his strange and meandering journey from project to project, his three kind of lives that he had throughout his career, as we continue with Joseph Losey. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell.